There's a number that most practice owners never calculate, and it is quietly costing them more than anything else in the building. It's the cost of an open chair. Here's the math in its simplest form. Say a chair should produce $400 an hour, and that's bare minimum. You lose 1 hour a day. You work 4 days a week, 46 weeks a year. That is 184 lost hours and $73,600 that will never come in the door. It's not from bad dentistry. It's not from bad luck, not from a soft economy or a tough insurance market that we hear all the time, from an empty schedule. The reason almost nobody sees that number is that it never appears anywhere. There's no line on your profit and loss statement called money we did not take or make. The chair sits empty, somebody takes an early lunch, the day ends, and nothing gets written down. The loss is real, it's repeatable, and it is invisible. Today we're going to make it visible. And then we're going to talk about how to build a schedule that stops producing it. This is the Dental Business Podcast. I am Phil Cole. Last episode, if you remember, we talked through the 8 numbers that run your practice. Today we go deep on the one that touches almost all of them at once, and that's your schedule. This is an operations episode, no theory, no philosophy about culture and vision. We're going to talk about how a day gets built, how much an empty chair actually costs you, how block scheduling works when it is done correctly, why appointments break, and what to do about it, and which numbers tell you whether any of this is working. So grab something to write with, because there are going to be 4 or 5 places where you're going to want to write down your own numbers. The Dental Business Podcast is brought to you by KLAS Solutions, 1 team, 5 divisions aligned around your practice. You can learn more at KLASSolutions.com. So let's go with part 1, and that to me is the schedule is a production plan. Most practices treat the schedule like a calendar. Just fill in the slots, take what comes, hope it all adds up at the end of the month, and that to me is just backwards. And it is the root of almost every scheduling problem I see. The schedule is not a calendar, it's a production plan. You start with the number you need to produce that day, and then you build that day to hit it. So let's start where the plan starts, with the daily production goal. And if I want to be specific about how that number gets set, because most practices either guess at it or they copy a number that they've heard at the local study club, dental society. Work backward from the year. Take your annual production target, not last year, plus a hopeful percentage that you're going to throw on there, but the number that actually you need, built from the overhead, from your debt services, your own compensation, and whatever growth you are funding. This we always call is it should be based off your break-even point. Divide that by the number of clinical days you will genuinely work, not 260, take out the holidays, but continuing education, vacation, and the days that you already know that you're going to be closed. Most general practices land somewhere between 160 and 190 real clinical days. So if your annual production target is $1,200,000 and you work 180 days, your daily production goal is $6,667. So let's just call it $6,700. That is your number. Now split that by column, because if hygiene should be carrying somewhere around 1/4 to 1/3 of the total production in a healthy general practice, then roughly 2,000 of that 6,700 belongs to the hygiene column and the rest belongs to the doctor column. Now you have two goals and each column knows what it owes that day. That number is not hope. As we always say at KLAS, strategy is not a hope. Hope is not a strategy. It is the target the entire day is designed around. Every block on that schedule either moves you towards it or it doesn't, and if it does not, well, there needs to be a reason it is sitting there. Here's what changes when a front desk understands they are scheduling to a goal instead of filling holes. They stop saying, we have an opening Tuesday at 2. Instead, they start saying, the doctor has time Tuesday and we want to get that crown seated. Does 2 o'clock work for you? Same slot on the same day, but completely different practices. One is passive. It presents a hole and waits to see if the patient wants it. The other is directed. It presents a piece of care and offers a time to get it done. Patients respond to the second one because the second one sounds like a plan for their health instead of a gap that you're just trying to fill. The second part is open chair and what it actually costs. Before we talk about protecting the schedule, you need to know what you are protecting. So let's put a real dollar figure on open chair time in your practice. This takes about 4 minutes and you can do it today. First, figure out what an hour in each chair should produce. Take your daily production goal for a column and divide it by the number of clinical hours in that column. If the doctor column owes $4,700 and the doctor works 8 clinical hours, that is roughly $585 an hour. If the hygiene owes $2,000 across 8 hours in one hygiene chair, that is $250 an hour. Those are your hourly values. So now write them down. Second, count your open hours. Not the hours that you felt busy, the actual unfilled, and unproductive chair time. Pull last month and count the holes. Cancellations that never got filled, no-shows. Blocks that opened up at 10 in the morning and stayed open. The Friday afternoon that never got booked. Add them up by column. Now third, multiply. Open hour times hourly value, that is your number. Then multiply it by 12. When practices run this exercise for the first time, the number is almost somewhere between $50,000 and $250,000 a year. And it's not a soft number. That is capacity you already paid for. You paid the rent on that room. You paid the team member standing next to the chair, and you paid the loan for that equipment that's inside of it. The overhead ran whether the chair was full or not. That is why open chair time is the most expensive problem in a practice. Almost every other fix costs you something. Adding a new service costs training and equipment. Adding new patients, well, it's going to cost you marketing dollars. Filling an empty chair you already are paying for, well, that costs you nothing but just better systems. The margin on the recovered chair time to close is pure. And I want you to keep that per hour number in your head for the rest of this episode because every decision that follows should be measured against it. When somebody on your team makes a scheduling choice, they are moving $500 increments around. They usually don't know that though. Once they do, well, they start making different choices. Let's look at the third, part 3, and that's block scheduling and doing it correctly. And that tool that makes that plan work, as I said, is block scheduling. The concept is simple. You decide in advance how much of each day is reserved for high production procedures and how much is reserved for everything else. and then you hold to these blocks. Here is the mistake I see constantly. A patient calls Monday morning wanting a cleaning for hygiene, or let's just say, a denture readjustment. The front desk drops them into two o'clock slot where you're holding that for a crown seat because the slot was open and the patient was on the phone and it felt like you were giving them good service. Then the crown comes in, a crown case comes in, and there's nowhere to put it. So it goes out 3 weeks. And a meaningful share of cases that go out 3 weeks, well, we know never happen at all because life gets in the way. Maybe the tooth stops hurting, and now the patient has the opportunity to reconsider. You traded $585 block for a $250 block, or less even, and you never felt it because both slots got filled and, well, the day looked busy. But busy is not the same as productive. That is the whole lesson. Block scheduling protects you from that. Let me walk you through how to build it. Start with how many high production blocks a day need to hit the goal. If the doctor column owes $4,700 and your average major case produces, let's say, around 1,400, you need roughly 3 of those blocks a day. Not 2 and not 6, 3. That's the answer to how many blocks you build. Then place them where they belong. In most practices, you should anchor the largest cases early, first thing in the morning and the first slot after lunch. That is when the doctor is usually the sharpest, when the room is all set, and when running late problems has the least amount of ripple effect. Long cases at 4 in the afternoon are basically how teams end up staying until 6:30 and start quietly resenting the schedule. Then fill the rest of the day around them. Shorter procedures, emergencies, new patient exams, and the work that is valuable, but it doesn't need that anchor slot. Then set a release time, and this is the part practices skip. A block is not held forever. You decide in advance if a Tuesday major block that is not filled by the end of, let's say, the day Friday, well, it then releases and becomes available for anything. 48 to 72 hours out, it's usually the common rule. That release valve is what keeps block scheduling from turning into empty chairs, and it is what makes the team comfortable holding a block in the first place because they know it will not sit there and just rot. Notice what block scheduling does and does not do. You're not turning the cleaning or the denture adjustment away, but you're giving that cleaning or denture adjustment the right slot and keeping your high value time for the high value work. Nobody loses. The patient still gets seen, the day still fills, it just fills in the order that produces. Now, there are 2 failure modes to watch for. The first is building blocks and then not holding them, which is worse than not building them at all because now you have a plan, the team ignores, and everybody learns the system is, well, more or less decorative. The second is holding blocks too rigidly with no release time, which strands capacity and makes the whole team hate the idea. Blocks with a release valve held consistently, applied by everybody the same way, well, that is the working version. The fourth part of this is where the schedule actually gets filled. Here is something that surprises owners. The schedule is not primarily filled at the front desk, it's filled in the operatory before the patient ever stands up. The single highest leverage habit is scheduling, is that no patient leaves without a next appointment. Hygiene reappointments at the chair 6 months out before the patient walks to the front. Restorative treatment gets scheduled while the patient is still sitting in the room where you just explained what they needed, not just handed a card and not told to go up to the front and they'll get you scheduled. Track that as a number. What percentage of hygiene patients leave with their next visit already on the books? A well-run practice, I should say, runs above 90%, should be closer to 95% or more. If yours is 60 or 70, which we see a lot of times, well, that gap is not a patient problem. It is a workflow problem. And it's the cheapest thing on this entire list to fix. It costs you a change in habit and about 90 seconds per patient. The reason it works is momentum. The patient is sitting in that chair, still hearing the explanation, still holding possibly the mirror, still connected to the reason, and they say yes. That same patient standing at the front desk with their keys out, thinking about their afternoon, maybe seeing they're running a little late, says, can I just check my calendar and can I get back to you? And that call, it never comes. The second habit is the verbal handoff. The clinical team member walks the patient to the front and says out loud in front of the patient what needs to happen next and when. Dr. Miller wants to see her back in 3 weeks for the crown seat. Now the front desk is not starting cold, and the patient has heard the plan twice from 2 people who agree. Agreement builds urgency. Silence, well, it dissolves it. And a word about language at the front. Small changes matter more than they should. You have an opening, or when we have opening invites, maybes. The doctor has time Tuesday at 2 or Thursday at 9, which works better for you. Well, that invites a decision. But give 2 options, not an open calendar. Well, that open calendar creates hesitation, but 2 choices creates appointments. The 5th part of this is the hygiene column. This is where the doctor to hygiene ratio matters. In a healthy general practice, hygiene should be driving a real share of production, generally, somewhere in the range of a quarter to a third. And it should be feeding the doctor column through exams and diagnosis. The second part is what practices miss. Hygiene is not a revenue center that happens to sit next to the doctor. It is the front door to the doctor's column. When hygiene is just cleaning with no handoffs, no periodontal assessments, no photos, no conversation about the cracked filling on tooth 3, you have a schedule full of activity that is not producing and it is not feeding anything downstream. A few things separate a producing hygiene column from a busy one. Periodontal disease gets diagnosed and treated instead of getting a prophy by default. Existing conditions get documented and shown to the patient. The doctor exam happens inside the hygiene appointment and is treated as a real exam, not a 15-second wave on the way to, I got to get to my other room. And the next visit gets booked before the patient leaves the room. We'll go deeper on the hygiene department in its own episode of this series, but it starts here and how the day is built. If hygiene has no protected time for periodontal therapy, that therapy does not happen. If the doctor has no gap between restorative cases to walk in for exams, those exams get rushed or they get skipped. The blocks determine the behavior always. The 6th part of this is broken appointments. These are the things that wreck even a well-built schedule. Cancellations and no-shows. Every one of them is an open chair you did not plan for, and most practices simply absorb it and move on. Start by measuring it because almost nobody does. Broken appointment percentage is the number of appointments that cancel or fail to show, divided by the total appointments scheduled over the same period. Run it monthly. Run it separately by hygiene and for the doctor column because the causes are usually different and you don't pay attention to that. When you first pull it, do not be surprised if it's going to be high. What matters is the direction it moves, and if more than a handful of your appointments are falling off, you do not have a patient problem again. You have a systems problem. Patients break appointments they do not value. Appointments that were maybe not confirmed well, or appointments that they never felt any real ownership of. Also track it in hours, not just percentages, because hours translate into dollars. 3 broken hygiene appointments and 1 broken crown seat are not the same event, even though there are 4 broken appointments either way. The fix has 3 parts, and all 3 must run together. First, a confirmation process that to me is human, not just an automated text that nobody reads. Automation is fine as a first touch. It is not a confirmation. A confirmation is a person or at minimum a message back that requires a response, and it references what the appointment is for. You have a crown seat Thursday at 2. Please reply yes so that we can hold that time for you. That's a confirmation. A reminder that you have an appointment, all that is just notifying or a notification. Second, a short notice list. Patients who want in sooner, organized by what they need and how much time they take. So when a slot opens at 9 in the morning, it gets filled by 10:30 instead of sitting empty all day. Well, most practices technically have this list somewhere. Very few have it built by procedure and appointment length, which is what makes it usable under pressure. When a 90-minute block opens, you do not want to scroll the list. You want to know who fits that 90-minute and call them. Third is the clear policy that the whole team applies the same way. It's got to be written down. What happens on the first break? What happens on the second break? What happens on the third? Whether there's a fee and when it applies. Who has the authority to waive it? A broken appointment should have a cost and a next step, not a shrug. And the point is not to punish patients. The point is got to be consistency. When a policy is applied unevenly, patients learn that the appointment is soft and the whole schedule loosens. One more thing, on the same day recovery, because this is where practices lose the most ground. The moment a cancellation comes in, somebody owns filling it. Not the team collectively, which means nobody, but one person by name. Otherwise, the 10 o'clock cancels at the 10 o'clock cancels at 8:45. Everybody assumes somebody is handling it, and the chair sits there all day producing nothing. Get those 3 systems running, and your broken appointment percentage drops. Your open chair time drops. Your production per day climbs without adding a single patient. This is what we call leverage. You're not working more days or longer hours. You're just protecting what you already have. And part 7, I guess, the numbers that tell you that it's working. So how do you know if any of this is landing? 6 numbers, look at them monthly, and look at the trend rather than any single month. Production per day against goal, not monthly total, which hides everything per day. A month can look fine on the surface, while a third of the individual days missed badly and a few huge cases covered the difference. Schedule utilization. What percentage of your available chair hours were actually filled with productive care? This is the direct measure of whether the schedule is working. Broken appointment percentage, split by hygiene and doctor. Key. 4, open chair hours, converted into dollars using the per hour numbers you calculated earlier. This is the one that changes behavior fastest because it is the only one that makes an empty slot feel like it actually is. Money on the floor. And 5, hygiene reappointment rate. What percentage of hygiene patients leave with their next visit booked? 6, unscheduled treatment. The dollar value of diagnosed and accepted treatment that is sitting on the software with no appointment attached to it. That number is often, it's just startling the first time someone pulls it. And it matters here because it is the answer to the question, what do I put in the block I just opened up? You are not looking for new patients to fill those blocks. You are looking for treatment your existing patients already said yes to. Post those 6 numbers somewhere and the team can see them. Talk about them in the morning huddles. Know to report the owner reads alone in the office. Numbers that stay private do not change behavior. Numbers that a team can see, understand the influence, and the influence does as well. Let me give you an order of operation because trying to change all of this in 1 week, well, it's just not going to work. Teams will reject it. And by month 2, you're back to the same old schedule. First 30 days, measure only. Calculate your daily production goals by column. Calculate your per hour chair value. Count open chair hours for last month and convert them into dollars. And then pull your broken appointment percentage. Pull your unscheduled treatment total. Change nothing yet. Just get the baseline and share it with the team. Most of the time, the baseline alone starts changing behavior because people genuinely, well, they just didn't know. Second 30 days, build the blocks. Decide how many high production blocks each day needs. Place them where the day can support them. Set your release time and write it down. Then hold them for a month with no expectations so that the team learns the system is real. Expect friction, of course, always in week 1 and week 2. That is normal. Third 30 days, close the leaks. Rebuild the confirmation process so it is human and the reference actual procedure. Build the short notice list by procedure and appointment length. Write the broken appointment policy and train everyone on it. Assign one person to own the same day fills. Then keep measuring the same 6 numbers every month on the same day of the month. And set the expectations correctly with your team. This is not a project with an end date. The schedule is the practice. Every dollar you produce comes through it, and every dollar you fail to produce is a slot that was empty, misused, or filled with something worth less than what could have been there. Here's the part I want to leave with you. Nothing in this episode requires a new patient. Nothing requires new equipment. No new service line, not a bigger building, or any bigger marketing budget. Every dollar we talked about today is already inside your practice. It is sitting in your existing patient base, in the treatment they have already accepted, and in the hours you already are paying for, whether somebody is in that chair or not. The schedule has always, the schedule is always your lever. Most owners just never hand that over to it and put their hand on it and pull. The Dental Business Podcast is brought to you by KLAS Solutions, one team, 5 divisions, aligned around your practice. Learn more about our KLAS dashboard at KLASdentalcoaching.com. If you take one action from this episode, make it the 4-minute calculation. Your per hour chair value times your open hours times 12. Run it before the end of the week. Whatever that number turns out to be, it is the size of the opportunity sitting inside a practice that you already own. Next episode, we do go inside the hygiene department where a lot of this either pays off or it falls apart. If this one helped, will you do me a favor? Share it with any other owners that you know. I'm Phil Cole. Thanks for listening. And remember, your practice is a business worth building well. We'll see you next time.